Hey, welcome back. We're going to get right into the stages of pathogenesis in our third video. So there are four basic stages. We have to first, and so these stages basically are what microbes have to do to cause disease. So if you're going to get a disease from a microbe, you first have to be exposed to that microbe. And so the pathogen has to gain contact to the body. Once they do that, they then have to be able to adhere, bind, and they have to start producing armies of the pathogen and or toxins. Once they have that army built up, then they have to be able to invade the body, get inside and in your cells. And from there, they can then cause infection, overcome your immune system, and cause damage. So the first step is exposure. And so there are multiple areas that microbes can gain entry. And so these are known as your portals of entry. And so this figure 15.6, shows the different portals of entry. And I'll just kind of give you a sneak peek, but the portals of entry are typically also going to be the same as the portals of exit. So whatever way microbes get into your body, they're probably going to get out the same way. So exposure to the microbe can occur via any damage to your skin. They can get in through any of the openings in your body that are lined with mucous membranes. They can get through. The parenteral route occurs when you have an injection, so like a needle or like a mosquito bite. Those could be parenteral routes, okay? Once they get in, then they're going to have to adhere. So they have to be able to bind. A lot of these microbes have adhesion molecules that help them to bind to an area on the host bodies, on the host body cells. And once they are bound, they can then start replicating. Once they start replicating, they can produce a biofilm that then is very protective and allows them to survive even in the presence of antibiotics. They also, that binding can cause the cell to take in the pathogen. So a lot of time adhesion and the invasion are going to go hand in hand. Once they adhere to a host receptor, that adherence might cause the host cell to change and open up to that pathogen. So pathogens, once they have adhered and they are able to produce lots of cells, they're then going to have to invade the body. So move throughout the body and infect the tissue cells. Some of them do this by using virulence factors. These virulence factors allow them to colonize in damaged tissue. This not only protects or this not only allows them to colonize, so those virulence factors cause damage and helps them to colonize, but it also can actually protect them from the host's immune system. And so H. pylori uses virulence factors to help them to get through the mucin in the stomach cells, or mucin surrounding the gastric cells. This allows them to get to the actual cells themselves, and then they can cause damage. Some pathogens stimulate endocytosis, so they bind, and this causes the cell to take them in via endocytosis, binding to those receptors. And sometimes that binding causes macrophages to actually take in the pathogen. And instead of the pathogen being degraded by the macrophage, the pathogen replicates in the macrophage and causes the macrophage to undergo apoptosis. And so instead of that, so this is a typical macrophage, and what happens, you have a bacterial cell comes in, and the bacterial cell is taken in via phagocytosis. So you have this phagosome. The phagosome binds to a lysosome, forming a phagolysosome. The lysosome releases digestive enzymes that breaks down the bacterial cell, and then we can get rid of that material via exocytosis. And so this is what normally happens, but some cells actually use this method, and once they get taken in, they then can release certain virulence factors that allows them to be able to replicate, and the macrophage dies. And so they cause macrophages to take them in, and the macrophages basically protect them. And then when they are ready to leave, they cause the cell to undergo apoptosis, and then they just leave the cell. And so that's an example of this would be Shigella. Shigella does this to our cells, to our intestinal cells. So once we get in, we have gained entry into those cells, we're then going to cause infection. There are different types of infection. So one form of infection is called a local infection. A local infection is confined to a specific area of the body. So think of like a boil is a localized infection of Staphylococcus aureus. A focal infection is a localized infection, like a boil again, that becomes, or that can move to the body. So it's localized, but maybe something happened to the boil, and pathogen or toxin leaks into our system and moves to another region of the body. That's a focal infection. And then a systemic infection is an infection that occurs throughout the entire body. And so primary infection we talked about is what caused the actual sickness initially. Secondary infection is often caused by another pathogen that is utilizing the fact that you are already immunocompromised to cause infection. So it's normally not going to be an infectious agent in a normal case. So for pathogens to cause infection, they first have to be exposed to the host, and then they have to be able to adhere to the host. So once they have adhered, the pathogen then releases toxins into our system. So it releases toxins, it releases toxins into our system that cause direct damage, or the pathogen stimulates the immune response, which causes indirect damage. So direct damage occurs by actual toxins, whereas indirect damage occurs because of the immune system being so strong and causing like severe inflammatory response. Typically, damage is going to help the pathogen leave the body. That's the job of the infection. The pathogen gets into your system and then it wants to leave your system. So Vibrio cholera induces watery diarrhea. So you can, and its job is to get into water supply so that other individuals drink the pathogen and then they can get sick as well. So we're basically disseminating the pathogen out. Bordetella pertussis triggers severe coughing, which then those pathogens can get into the air. That's what they do. And I told you that the portal of entry is typically also the portal of exit. So if you are moving in through the GI tract, so you're coming in, say, through the mouth, you're leaving through the GI tract too. It might be the opposite side, but you're still leaving through the GI tract, either through the mouth or through the anus. Bordetella pertussis goes into the respiratory system and it causes damage, and then it leaves via the respiratory system, getting expelled from the body. So let's look at some of these types of toxins or enzymes that these pathogens use. Actually, you know what? Let's not, because it's been 10 minutes. So let's stop this video and we'll get into this in the next video. Bye.